Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Saturday edition video being an upgrade and commander build on the new European destroyer line that's come into the game. This being the tier 9, hopefully pronouncing this right, the Lambros Katsonis. It's a Greek naval conventional destroyer in the game. So we're going to go over the playstyle of the ship, upgrades, commander build, so on and so forth. So getting right into it. First is talking about the playstyle of this ship. In the game, you have three types of destroyers. You have just torpedo destroyers, you have gunboat destroyers, and you have hybrid destroyers, which are a mix of both the torpedoes and the gunboating aspects. The Lambros Katsonis leans much more towards being a gunboat. Even how Wargaming, when they introduced the ship, the torpedoes are a bit more of an afterthought. Particularly because you only have one rack on each side, two sets of 4, and they do like max damage. I think it's like 10,700. Yeah, and so torpedo belt protection and all that stuff kicks in. You don't do a lot of damage, and they don't have a long range. I mean, they're okay, but at tier 9 kilometers, not that hot. Multiplied by the fact that this ship has 7 guns, so you have 3 on the front, and then we go back here. Wait. Did I say 3? 7? 6, right? I already messed that up. Yeah, 6 guns. Lol. So 3 on the front, and then you've got the 3 heat back here on the rear, being 140mm guns. That best blaze at the longer range, as all covered in yesterday's video. Now, we'll break that up down a little bit more as we go through the video. But just to talk about the armor. The armor is very conventional. Here on the ship, it's 19mm and 13mm. I didn't mention it in yesterday's video. I'll hang on to that thought. But a side note related to that, you know, just because how I kind of emphasize that this is a very large destroyer. I mean, it sits very high up out of the water. A lot of players can get a lot of damage, and if they hit the front part of that ship, you know, maybe some like minor buff to their armor could be cool to see, but that kind of breaks apart with the ship and how it's currently designed, and it'd have to be a lot of changes. So it's just an odd duck. That's really how I would define this ship. Now, first we're going to talk about the modules. So these are 140mm guns. We've gone for the reload in slot 6, meaning we have a 3.9 second reload time. We've also done some things with our commander. Have we done one of those skills yet? That's just buffing the range. We have nothing in terms of buff the reload on the commander yet, unless Adrenaline Rush kicks in. 180 turn time, 20.7 seconds. So not so great, and maximum HE shell damage 2000. So you only get high explosive on this line, so you miss out a lot. There's a lot of times I use armor piercing on broadside targets, especially cruisers, and you just can't get that additional damage in. So I would much rather have AP on this versus just having that radar, but we'll talk more about it as we go along. Your hull buff and also having survivability expert, which we have on this commander. Without the hull B, it would be 20,450. With hull B and survivability expert, we're at 23,450 hit points. And those are hit points you need. When I talked about the strengths and weaknesses of this ship in the playstyle, I showed you guys, like, in 5 seconds, I went from 17k to 3k, just because this is a large destroyer. It's not very maneuverable, and you slow down really slow. So, and you're just, because of being taller out of the water, with that huge nose on this destroyer, you're just going to take a lot of damage. So you definitely need this as your first one. Your torpedoes are stock. There's no upgrade there. So 68 second reload time, 9 kilometer range, 10,700 maximum damage. 80 knots. So they're fast torpedoes. They're kind of like the their counterpart of the standard European destroyer line, you know, comparison to the Osterotland. Going to the guns, we have taken gun specs on our commander that extends our main battery firing range by plus 20%. Okay. Otherwise, stock, this gun range is pretty tragic. Though I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly that would be. But it would be, I think it's around 11, maybe it's 10 something stock, right? And then you get to buff it up to 13.8 in connection with that commander skill. These guns have relatively flat shell arcs, and they're pretty decent for being 140mm guns. So, in being a gunboat, you need to build into the range. Otherwise, because of being such a large, massive destroyer, you just take a lot of damage when you're trying to perform that gunboat role if you're playing closer to the enemy. Fifth slot, 76,000 horsepower, 38 knots. So with Sierra Mike, you can get up to 39.9, 40 knots without having to utilize your plus 8% engine boost. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. For the first slot, I'm going to recommend taking the main armament modification 1. This reduces the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by negative 20%, improves your main battery torpedo tube survivability by plus 50%, and torpedo tubes repair time and main battery repair time, if either of those should become incapacitated, reduced by negative 20%. Now, when we talk about these guns, because I used the word conventional warship. It's because, these are pretty old school, casemate guns. I mean, you can just see, basically these guns, the rear part sticks out, the loading mechanism, right? So it is possible to easily have these guns knocked out. They're very vulnerable. They just stick out like a sore thumb, especially on the front of the ship. So you really want to have that main armaments modification 1, primarily for the guns, not so much for the torpedoes. You don't need to worry about magazine modification 1, just take Julie Charles the combat signal. This completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating versus this skill, which is just reduces by negative 70%. And you take this playing randoms, ranked, claim battles. Second slot, for the standard upgrade, the engine room protection is the way to go. It's going to reduce the risk of your engine and your steering gears becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Repair time, if one of those two should be incapacitated, repair time is reduced by negative 20%. Okay. Now, there's two options when we're looking at special upgrades. It could be the engine boost modification 1, or it could be the surveillance radar modification 1. Now, the issue I kind of have with surveillance radar modification 1, you're paying, here I can just open it up. Without the coupon, I think it's 17,000 coal. With coupon, I think it's 12,000, 750. Okay, and that's a plus 20%. Your radar duration is 10 seconds. So you're paying 12,750 coal with coupon to add 2 more seconds onto your radar. I don't really think that's so much worth it. Where I would be much more inclined to boost the engine boost duration. So this is plus 30%. I referenced yesterday how it's not the longest, so it's 90 seconds. So if I wanted to see what that would add on, it would add on 27 seconds. So you almost get to full 2 minutes. So probably on Gdansk, I will be taking engine boost modification 1, but there's other tier 9 ships that just play better in terms of the gunboat role versus this Lambros Katsonis. So I'm just going to take in, I would encourage, play a different tier 9 ship if you want to play a tier 9 DD gunboat. But engine boost modification, if you do really enjoy this ship, I would say take this. Otherwise, just leave engine room protection on. Third slot, I've taken aiming systems modification 1. This reduces your maximum main battery shell dispersion by negative 7%. So that means you're getting tighter vertical and horizontal dispersion. And I'll throw on the right side of the screen what those numbers are. It's going to probably be somewhere between 4 to 8 meters improvement on the horizontal and the vertical. Just because in playing a gunboat role, and when you're playing out further away, that 12, 13 kilometers, I just like that little additional accuracy. Also on DD engagements. Some players might want main battery modification 2 because of your turret traverse being 20.7 seconds. It's not great for a destroyer. So you can try out both, see what you like best. Myself, I like this. You also get a slight buff on your torpedo tubes traverse speed, plus 20%, meaning that your torpedoes are going to traverse to where you're aiming 20% faster. I guess I could reference the smoke generator modification 1. I talked a little about smoke. It's not great. It's a 20-second action time, smoke screen dispersion time 93 seconds, cooldown 160 seconds. So it's like bleh. It's just not that great. So I'd have a hard time investing in the smoke generator versus the aiming systems modification 1, because a lot of times you kind of get you can't get 4 out of your smoke. You only get 3. We can build in, I think, add for... Yeah, we haven't taken Superintendent yet. So really, I'd just lean towards aiming systems modification more. 4 slot, propulsion modification 1 all day long. I think in the video I was saying it slightly wrong of yesterday, or I was saying that the destroyer is just very slow to accelerate, slow to de-accelerate. It is very slow to de-accelerate to come to a full stop, but the propulsion modification 1 does help you reach full engine power when you're accelerating. And because of being a gunboat, this is the typical skill you'll see destroyer experienced gunboat destroyer players take. You can also try steering gears modification 1. I'm going to talk about that though here in a minute on the 5th slot. But I like leaning towards propulsion modification 1. Now, in light of yesterday's video, one of the big things beyond that I don't like about the Lambros Katsonis is just its lack of maneuverability. So rotor shift time is 4.6 seconds. You have a turning circle radius of 720 meters. With how large the destroyer is and how high it sits out of the water, you just easily take a lot of damage because of your lack of maneuverability and poor deacceleration on the destroyer and how high she sits out of the water with that big nose. So that makes me wonder about the steering gears modification 2. Now, that means you're giving up the concealment system modification 1, which reduces the ship's detectability range by -10%, air range by -10%, and plus 5% when enemies are firing upon your ship. Your concealment, and keep in mind, we don't have concealment on our commander. If we did, it would bring us down to 7.2 kilometer max conceal. But if we got rid of concealment systems, we would go from 8 to, I think it's like 8.88. You're almost 8.9 kilometers. So you have a 0.1 kilometer window where you can stealth radar, right? So you can still radar anything that spots you instantaneously. So I wonder about giving up the consumer systems modification 1 and taking the steering gears modification 2. Just because, you know, you have the smoke to use. You saw illustrations of that yesterday's game. Granted, you're not gonna be as getting close to enemy destroyers when you have the DD engagement. So like that Jaeger in yesterday's game, he would have detected us sooner, and maybe he would have maneuvered more away more quickly, where we caught him out in a good place where he couldn't escape, and so our team was able to kill him. So it's kind of this toss-up. Do I really want to give up that concealment to go for the steering gears modification 2? This is, to me, is a very valid question to ask with this turn 9 destroyer. I don't have the answer for you. It's something I'm willing to try out, and it's something I have to see how Gdansk plays, but I might end up testing it out on Gdansk more so than here on the Lambros Katsonis. But it's a valid question if you're going for a little bit more of the gunboat build. A lot of players will just take this when they're playing gunboat DDs and not having any conceal. So it's worthwhile question. It's worthwhile topic. So if you're not comfortable giving up a lot of conceal, then I would say keep concealment system modification 1 if you're still figuring it out. If you feel really comfortable in not having a lot of concealment on the destroyer and playing more that gunboat DD open water, then I say go for steering gears modification 2. Regardless, you can try them both out. 2 million credits for either of them, 25 doubloons to demounts, so on and so forth. So it's a valid discussion. 6th slot, main battery modification 3, and that helps us get that main battery reload time down to right now being 3.9 seconds, but we're going to get that even better. And main battery traverse speed, -13%. So that's contributing to that 20.7 second 180 degree turn time that you're seeing here. So I've appreciate the DPM because you're kind of fall into that. When you're a gunboat DD, you're also falling into that farming DD role. So just being able to have my guns perform that much more quickly. You wouldn't build for torpedoes. This isn't a torpedo destroyer. Just play the Östergötland if you want to play a tier 9 torp Swedish European destroyer line. And you could buff the range even more, plus 16%. So then you're getting out past that 13.8 we're at right now. So let me just do the math on my phone here. 16, so you'd be adding 2.2 kilometers. So 2.2 plus that 13.8. So you're lighting targets up 16 kilometers away. Do I think it's worth it in giving up your DPM with the third slot? Not so much. I might argue more for the gunfire control system if you could only get your max gun range with the commander skill we've taken to like 12 or 12.5. Then I'd be like, maybe. But this would be another thing I would say. If you really want to see and test out, you can try and go for it. But your shell travel time, it's decent. It's 840 meters a second. But when you try to start landing farming targets even farther away, it's just more difficult to land the shells. Not that it's impossible, but because of how... I would define this destroyer as clumsy. It's a very clumsy destroyer. But if you get farther out to 16 kilometers and harassing, or 15 kilometers harassing battleships, and it's much more difficult for them to land shells on you, and that helps you in your clumsiness avoid them in terms of maneuverability of this ship. So it's another valid thing. I would say test it out. I don't think I have the answer for you right now, but I'm going to spend a lot of time experimenting with Gdansk. Armament, we've talked a little bit about already. You only have high explosive in terms of your main battery. Wargaming kind of insulted the player base when they gave the reasoning why they took AP away, and there's like, well, most players in a game, I don't remember how they stated it. I wish they would have taken a screenshot of it, because then they rechanged the writing in the dev blog. But it was written in a very insultive way. The community was like, yo, that's kind of insulting, and then they worded it more nicely. So you have that decent fire starting chance for a destroyer. It's 10%. You can buff it up with these two combat signals to get 11%. And we could take Demolition Expert. I think get it up to 12%. So you will be trying to focus on starting fires and then using torpedoes when possible, kind of spamming them in the in-between. But they're 9-kilometer torpedoes. They're not anywhere near to something like the Australian, which has the 13.5. So it's kind of, we might use your concealment or smoke and you torpedo targets that are coming in towards you. That's pretty much how you use these, or you're dealing with a destroyer and a smoke in between utilizing your radar. You have depth charges, so you get 2 charges, 12 bombs in a charge with 2,400 maximum damage. So, okay, depth charges during the ship. Consumable wise, damage control party standard, 5-second action time, 40-second cooldown time for a DCP on a destroyer here in World of Warships. Your smoke, we talked a little bit about it. Not a long action time. It's 20 seconds, so it kind of reminds you of the Pan-Asian destroyers, and a smoke screen dispersion time of 93 seconds. So it's okay, but it's pretty painful cooldown time of 160 seconds, so that's 2 minutes and 40 seconds, 60, 120, 160, if I did math right in my head. So that's you have to be wise when you decide to utilize these smoke screens. Otherwise, you'll get punished, and I illustrated that yesterday because I just was like, oh yeah, I went back into the combat zone before a risky position before my smoke came on off cooldown, and I lost majority of my health. I was very punished for that. This is a story that can be punished very easily for poor positioning. Engine boost, plus 8%. We talked about taking the engine boost, modification 1. To me, this would be the best one to take here in slot 2. And that would get you up to almost 2 minutes, would be 117 seconds. You had 27 seconds on. A duration time, it has a 90-second cooldown time. So you tend to use these engine boosts more of you get caught in a bad situation and you need to disengage, or you're kiting and you just want that additional speed to help propel you past that 40 knots and laying fire on an enemy, and you're trying to utilize that speed and playing with it so enemy ships aren't landing salvos on you so accurately. Radar, Wargaming kind of really reoriented things around here with this ship. So normally destroyers have a 7.5 kilometer radar on radar capable ships, destroyer capable ships, so like the Pan-Asian destroyer line, Ragnar, Black. So it's normally 7.5. So they buffed it to 9. But what they did is they really drastically reduced the action time to 10 seconds. You can buff that up to 12 seconds, but to me that's not worth sacrificing this upgrade or choosing it over engine boost modification 1. So it's kind of just utilizing it when you need to. You get caught out and you need to see what's spotting you, or utilizing around caps. This isn't a cap contesting destroyer. The Pan Asian destroyer line, Chungmu would do it better. Yu Yang, Black, Ragnar, they play that role better, much better than what this destroyer does. Cooldown time 60 seconds, so that's a bit trollish. So you can, I've done it many times in the ship, where you use it, it goes off cooldown for 57 seconds. You pop it again, catching that same destroyer in that same smoke screen who thought he was safe, and so you catch him off guard. So it's a bit trollish. In terms of combat signals, what would I run on this destroyer? Probably I would just run something like this. Your AA is pretty bad for this ship. It's 4-kilometer range, and it doesn't do a lot of continuous damage either. And you don't get any. You don't have the long range AA, and you don't have flak. But if I was just taking the bare minimum, I would probably just pick for this. I just think it's funny to troll and having a shorter cooldown time on the radar, engine boost, smoke screen, and your DCP when you're a destroyer. That's kind of a bit consumable, leaning more heavy on the consumable side. All right, going into the commander. Now, one of the things that is a bit, I'm still learning this line, but we haven't had a high commander here on the line because it takes a more higher skill point commander on this line. Now, I wonder if I can utilize my Ragnar commander and sticking him here on this line. But there's just a few things that it's a bit different than the Ragnar commander and what I have in mind for this line. So I'm just going to go down, starting off with a 10-point commander build. So for your first 1 point, you want preventive maintenance, reduces risk of the main turrets, torpedo tubes, steering gears, and engine becoming incapacitated by negative 30%. 3-point commander, last stand is mandatory on this ship. And I say mandatory, and when I say mandatory, I mean mandatory. The ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine, steering gears incapacitated. You're such a large destroyer, you just easily get caught out, and you're regularly going to have your engine and your steering gears incapacitated. And so you need this to remain partially able to sustain speed, so you're not dead in the water, or your rudder rudder is jammed, and you're just sailing in a circle, and you're sailing back into the direction of the enemy team. So it's not so great. 6-point commander, survivability expert, you gonna need that health. Again, clumsy, hard to maneuver, sits tall in the water, slow to come to a full stop. You're gonna get punished a lot in this destroyer, so you need that additional hit points to have here to make the most of this, and it's pretty much mandatory for gunboats in the game is that they run survivability expert. Now, there's two directions you could go with your 10-point commander. Are you really wanting to play a concealed destroyer? Max conceal on this line. Now, my argument is if you want to play a max conceal build, you want to be a cap contester, like I said earlier, play the Pan Asian destroyers, play Black, pick up Ragnar. If you're wanting to focus on a destroyer that can easily go around caps. I mean, I like the smokescreen of the Pan Asians more than I do on this destroyer. So I would say play one of those ships. Yes, your radar is only 7.5 kilometers, but if you're cap contesting, that means you're cap contesting. Like, you might be right up on the cap or quite close to it. And those destroyers are much more, well, except for Ragnar. But Ragnar gets amazing belt armor that you and stronger armor than what you can get here on the Lambros Katsonis. And the other destroyers I referenced are much more maneuverable than this ship, meaning you can easily get out tricky situations. So I'm going to recommend that you don't go a full conceal build with the commander here on the ship. What I would say instead, take the main battery and AA expert. Now, once I've done this, because it extends your main battery firing range by plus 20%, and damage from AA shell explosions plus 15%, but it's kind of a lull, because this when you look at the AA, you don't have shell explosions. So you're only taking this for that plus 20% of the main battery firing range. So you're only getting one of the two permanent effects of this skill. But that gets you up to that 13.8 kilometer range. And I have found that the damage I do per game has been better. It's been much more increased when I've taken this skill. Where before I actually had Conceal, and I said this is just not working. I'm going to go without Conceal, and it's made this destroyer more comfortable to play. This destroyer has a identity crisis. What kind of destroyer is it? But the reality is it's just this gunboat destroyer. Though you're tempted to take that radar in, you're tempted to push in on the enemy and caps, and you just get punished for it. So just play more at range and supporting your team possible in moving up. It just varies. It's positioning, right? It's a big thing in this game. For a 13-point build, then I would say take Adrenaline Rush. As you lose health, your reload time is going to be buffed. Torpedo tube reload time is buffed. And then your AA damage gets a buff. So those are all good things. So, your reload is going to drop down from 3.9, 3.8, 3.7, 3.6, 3.5, I think just about. So you get more out of your DPM with a gunboat, which is very typical to have here in World of Warships. After this, I would say for a 16-point commander is take the main battery and AA specialist. So this is going to buff your main battery reload time, or reduce it, I should say. Where you go from 3.9 to 3.7 seconds, even better. Now when your adrenaline rush just kicks in, you're dropping 3.6, 3.5, 3.4. Thus having a greater DPM performance in the game. Other buff you get is you get a slight buff, plus 10% to your AA damage. Again, your AA sucks on this line. Australian has much better AA. Continuous damage plus 19, so up to 2 and 14. So really, you're just taking this for the guns. Same as with the main battery and AA expert. So 16 points, that leaves you with 5 points to play with. Maybe there's a few different ways you can go. What is in my mind is taking the Fearless Brawler. So with Fearless Brawler, it can be activated skill. Well, the permanent effect you get from it is you have another shell explosion in your AA salvos, but you don't get explosions in your AA salvos. So that's just not there. That skill, that buff is from this one. Okay, just to be clear. But your can be activated is reduces main battery reload time while your ship remains detected by an enemy. Negative 10%. So that means that you drop down from that 3.7 to, well, you take 0.37. So then you're close to 3. You're underneath 3.4. Yeah. And I just have to check my math. So 3.7 minus 0.37, 3.33 second reload time. So you're getting even better DPM performance out of this gunboat destroyer. Now, if I was thinking about playing this in a ranked, more competitive setting, I might actually be rather tempted to take Dazzle. Dazzle kind of made a really big debut in the last King of the Seas tournament. This is something you're seeing people with, I don't know if there was Ragnar's, but you saw like a lot of Darings had this. It reduces the accuracy of hostile fires directed at your ship for 15 seconds after your ship's been detected. Plus 20% of dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship. A lot of the damage you take in the Lambros Katsonis happens in the first 10 seconds. 5 seconds, 10 seconds of you being spotted. So that's kind of why I wonder about this skill, but if I'm going to play randoms, I'm going to play ranked, I'm going to play co-op, I'm definitely going to take Fearless Brawler. So that leaves us with 1 point, as we're getting close to our 30-minute mark. What would I say after this? Well, I would say either incoming fire alerts. It's warning about a salvo fired at your ship from a distance of more than 4.5 kilometers. This build I'm showing you right here is a really standard gunboat commander build right here. So normally, because you can't take something like priority target, taking this just alerts you of incoming fire. So you're like, okay, I'm automatically gonna slow down, kill my speed, maneuver, accelerate, whatever that may be. Other players may be tempted to take Grease the Gears. Nothing bad in that. It's going to improve your 180-degree turn time by negative 2.7 seconds. So then you have an 18-second 180-degree turn time. Myself, this is the route I'm planning to take with this line. and when I've played and tested other gunboat builds. So for myself, I'm really interested to see what happens once we've taken these two skills and just seeing how that buffs our overall DPM. And will that affect more of my impressions of this ship? So that's going to bring this video to a close. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. If you are not subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe, as we recently passed 1,500 subscribers, so it's really cool to see the community continue to grow. And if you've already subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Let me know down below in the comments what you've taken on this ship and your impressions and thoughts of the Lambros Katsonis. So until next time, take care.